Hey everyone, this is Neil once again from the Overclocking magazine, and I'm here to talk to you about another very affordable DDR5 kit. So I actually hit up Wootware and I asked them about this particular kit because I was looking at the more affordable kits. So DDR5 6000, maybe up to 6400, because I've seen that most people don't buy memory that's rated higher than that. So if you are a person that's on a tight budget, and I've been on a tight budget trying to build a machine, you want to get as cheap a memory as possible. And if you are going to go DDR5, the memory that I'm going to talk to you about right now, the G.SKILL FLARE X5, is actually retailing for $2,149. That was the last time I checked it out. I have no idea what the US dollar pricing is because I looked on Amazon, it wasn't available or what have you, so whatever. But point is, this is amongst some of the cheapest memory that you can get locally, at least. To tell you briefly about this memory, so the default ratings for it is of course DDR5 5600, but it's CL36, 36, 36, 89, I think, at 1.2 volts. So the IC of choice on this particular memory set is the Samsung ICs. So I started, of course, at the XMP settings, right? 1.2 volts, 36, 36, 36, 89. But with that sort of settings, you are leaving a lot of performance on the table, right? Whether you're using a mid-range GPU or using a high-end one, and specifically when you're using a high-end one, you're leaving a lot of performance on the table. So I took it upon myself to use some of the profiles that were on the motherboard, right? The Gaming XAX. And one of the profiles that they had there was 6400, I think at 1.45 volts. And it was CL40? Yeah, something like that. I eventually ran the memory at CL34, 36, 36, 52. Don't worry about the 52. That's just from another profile on a different motherboard. But anyway, I ended up running that. And just to compare those settings with the settings of 6000 CL32. 6400 and 6000, not so much of a difference, but definitely 6000 and 5600. Alright, so without further delay, let's take a look at the benchmarks.
As usual, first up is ADATA 64 memory bandwidth. Going from 5600 to 6400 adds about 14 gigabytes to each of the subtests. A rather significant boost to the test results. The DDR5 6000 setting sits comfortably in the middle. Please note that 1.435 isn't necessary and the same result can be achieved at 1.4 volts. ADATA 64 latency result is pretty much in line with the bandwidth results for the 6400 setting, taking the top spot. The 7-zip benchmark is next, and the 6000 setting seems to be much closer to the 6400 OC in this real-world test. The trend will repeat throughout the remaining benchmarks, as you'll see shortly as well. Again, the 5600 XMP profile is dead last, even though the score in and of itself is respectable. Geekbench is where it gets a little interesting, as we can see that the memory score improves significantly by switching to DDR5 6000 CL32, and even further still with DDR5 6400. There's no difference in the Geekbench 5 single core results, but a significant difference in the multi-core scores between 6000 and 5600, but hardly anything from 6000 to 6400. SuperPi 32M is another test that drives the point home that the difference between 6400 and the 6000 setting is likely not worth the additional voltage required. In fact, in this benchmark, the 6000 setting is actually faster. In the 3D Mark profile test, the default 5600 and OC 6000 setting are near identical, with the 6400 pulling ahead. The 300 point advantage at the higher frequency, while appreciated, isn't really meaningful and could easily be overcome with tighter subtimings for the 6000 setting or perhaps 5600 as well. Handbrake encoding, much like SuperPi 32M, favors the 6000 setting. Thus far, two of the closest tests to real-world application performance suggest that the 6000 setting is just as good as the 6400 OC for the most part. Cinebench is one test that is truly unresponsive to DRAM tuning, or at least shows minimal gains. Nonetheless, the 6400 setting came out on top, but it's within a margin of error, so I would say these scores are actually identical. Y-Cruncher, which is fairly taxing on memory, especially the 2.5B run, shows the 6400 setting ahead by almost 1 full second. A fairly sizable advantage in this benchmark. For the lighter one, 1 billion test, the scaling is pretty much the same, and of course the 5600 XMP setting produced the lowest result. V-Ray is another real-world benchmark, and once again the 6000 OC is fastest, even if by a small margin. Once again, it seems to be shooting for 6400 isn't worthwhile, given the additional voltage needed and the risk of instability attempting to do the higher frequency. We finally get to the game. Here, there's no difference between any of the DRAM settings or frequencies. For Guardians of the Galaxy, the 6400 setting is the best, but only by a small margin. Interesting though that the minimum frame rates for the 6400 settings are substantially higher than that of the XMP or the 6000 setting. Far Cry 6 closes up the game tests, and once again there's no difference between the three test frequencies and timings. As such, I would once again just stick to 6000 and call it a day.
So there you have it. That's pretty much the performance that you're going to get from this kit. Now, you could obviously tune your secondary and tertiary timings even more on any of the profiles, or rather the settings that I used, but I didn't bother with that because, as you know, tuning memory can take an eternity, particularly on an Intel platform. But generally, even if you just stick to just tuning the primary timings, as I've done in the benchmarks and so forth, you will actually see that you are probably better served by running CL32, 34, 34, or 35, 35 rather, at 6000 than trying to shoot for 6400. It's nice that you can do 6400, but given the motherboard that I was using, which is probably more in line with the kind of board you are looking at if you are buying memory at this price point, or at least you are price sensitive, I would say that just stick to 6000 and tune yourself away there, and you'll be happiest there. And even if you had to compare the 6000 settings with maybe 6800 of another kit, you'll find that in realistic terms, in real application performance, there isn't that much of a difference. And yes, I do know this is an AMD designed kit because it has an Expo profile, not necessarily an XMP one, but it shouldn't make a difference. I mean, I tested on an Intel platform and I still got the results that I got. Anyway, with that said, remember, share, like, subscribe or not, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. So take care of yourselves and peace.